want to thank everybody for coming out today. We're going to talk about a cold case of a missing young girl, Autumn McClure, who was reported missing in May of 2004. But before we get started, there's a lot of people that I need to thank who helped in this. Captain Paul Kammerer in the back there, and all of the investigative service unit. Sergeant Seth Amron, who is our major case supervisor. Detective Sean McGuire, who was the assigned detective to this case. Josh Mott in our forensics unit. Dr. Sutton, who you see on the screen here, with the University of Florida Maple Center for Forensic Medicine. She is absolutely amazing, and when you listen to her talk, you're going to see what an incredible person she is. Our road and bridge folks who helped us with the excavation, the medical examiner's office that was out there, and a company called Ameritech. They had to help us move the new homeowner's home and get into where we had to get into. And I really, really want to thank them for that. And of course, the property owners, the folks that bought the property in 2021, put in a beautiful driveway, put in a beautiful modular home, and then they had Detective McGuire knocking on the door saying, hey, we got a search warrant and we're going to be tearing your stuff up. So he did a really great job coordinating to keep the property owner as whole as possible. So here's how this all begins. In May of 2004, Autumn's grandmother calls the sheriff's office to report her missing. We contact her boyfriend, a Michael Camelli, who tells us that he dropped her off at the Volusia Mall and he hasn't seen her since. So detectives start doing everything they need to do. They put the missing persons flyer out there. They're doing neighborhood interviews. They're doing everything that we do when there is a missing person. The grandmother, Sherry McClure, calls us a couple days later and says, hey, Autumn has called me from a 321 area code, and I've gotten some letters from her that are postmarked Melbourne, Florida. So that's the follow-up that we get. A little while later, in 2004 or so, detectives get some information that Autumn was staying at a house, or at a trailer, 1320 Hand Avenue, Lot 32 in Ormond Beach, with a Brian Donley, who is wonderful arrest photos up there, and a Jessica Freeman. So detectives go out and they interview them, and they basically tell detectives that, well, Autumn, who has never run away before, this is the first time she runs away from her family. He really didn't get along with her grandmother, and I work with her at Winn-Dixie, and we let her stay at the house for a couple of days, but we don't know anything else. So everything goes cold. You look from 2005 to 2016, we obtained DNA from family members that we put in the CODIS system. She's entered into the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. So everything that we're supposed to do, it's in there. So God forbid, if a body turns up, we're able to try to identify her. In 2016, detectives who are still working this case, obviously 12 years later, they recontact her boyfriend, Michael Camelli, and he admits that he lied to us in 2004. That, in fact, he didn't drop Autumn off at the Volusia Mall. He dropped her off at the Seabreeze Bridge, where she got into a car with Jessica Freeman. In 2018, 2 years later, detectives are successful in tracking down Jessica Freeman, who now lives in Nevada. And she says, I have no idea what you're talking about. I have no information than what I told you before. In 2021, Detective McGuire gets a phone call from a Chris Miller. Chris Miller is related in certain ways through friendship and marriage to Brian Donley and Jessica Freeman. And he basically tells the detective, I got to get this off my chest. And basically what I need to tell you is there is a teenage girl who's missing and is dead, is buried in Volusia County, and Brian Donley and/or Jessica Freeman had to have something to do with this. The detective is able to have Mr. Miller make a controlled call to Jessica Freeman, where she basically says in that controlled call that she saw Brian Donley kill Autumn And then he told a myriad of stories that he chopped her up, he set her on fire, he buried her off of Flomish Avenue. He just tells her a whole bunch of different things. So then we go to 2022, where our suspect in this case dies. Karma is a bitch. He dies on May 26, 2022, almost 18 years to the day that we believe Autumn was killed. So now detectives go to re-interview Jessica Freeman because she now has moved from Nevada back to Florida in Crescent City, I believe, but she won't talk to us without immunity. So the detectives are able to go to state attorney's office, tell them what we have. State attorney's office grants her immunity to talk to us. So she gives a statement to us that she basically worked with Autumn in the Winn-Dixie, and they allowed her to stay with her and Brian on this 1320 Hand Avenue, lot number 32. She tells us that Autumn couldn't live with her grandmother anymore. She said her grandmother was mean. They were involved in a sexual relationship with Autumn. Now, keep in mind, Brian was 31 at the time. Autumn was 16. She also goes on to tell us that she came home one afternoon and saw Brian choking Autumn in the bathroom. When by the time she intervened, she saw that Autumn was lifeless, and she left the house. She left the trailer. 2 weeks later, when she comes home, she sees there's plywood on the bedroom floor and asks what happened to Autumn and Autumn's stuff. And his response to her is, shut up or the same thing will happen to you. She's dead. If you don't want that to happen to you, shut up and mind your business. So he tells her multiple stories through the years of how he cut Autumn up and buried her and spread her parts over different parts. She also stated that in late 2021 or early 2022, Brian paid a visit to 1320 Hand and saw the new manufactured home going in there and saw the new driveway going in and was very relieved at the construction that was taking place there. Jessica at the time did not tell us the exact she didn't know the exact location. So in late 2023, I guess she realizes, hey, this immunity stuff really works. She contacts Detective McGuire and says she's buried underneath where that trailer was. That's where you'll find her. So the detectives get together, they get warrants, a search warrant obtained, and now we have to work with the homeowner because we have a homeowner who now put this brand new modular home in, did all this work, and now we had to figure out a way to work with him and make him whole. So we get the warrant signed on the 21st of the month. On the 26th of the month, we execute the search warrant, which was Monday. On Tuesday, we start with the help of Meritech and Road and Bridge, move the folks' modular home out, tear up all of the concrete, and we begin excavation. And at this point, I will let Dr. Sutton jump in from there and thank her again for everything that she did, because she can tell you what had occurred since then.
All right, great. Thank you, Sheriff Chitwood. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Lyra Sutton with the University of Florida Maples Center for Forensic Medicine. And as a Volusia County native myself, I'm always appreciative of the opportunity to come back to the area and work with the Volusia Sheriff's Office on cases. So thank you to Sheriff Chitwood for the request to assist on this case and to work alongside your phenomenal deputies and investigators. This case in particular, we have been discussing and working on the logistics of searching the scene and possibly conducting an excavation at the site for about a year. But of course, having those structures and the concrete on that site really posed quite a unique challenge for the normal types of search techniques that we would ordinarily implement. One of the techniques that we did use on scene to identify areas of interest for excavation is a tool called ground penetrating radar. And that gives us indications, we call those anomalies, of any areas beneath the soil surface that might be of a different density than the surrounding soil. The challenge in many cases is that it doesn't always clearly differentiate what those anomalies specifically are. They can really be anything that's different. So that could be tree roots, utility lines, items of evidence, or even human remains. So we used this tool on scene and we located a few specific areas of interest in our search yesterday. From there, we began the excavation process in those targeted areas, and we were very fortunate to be able to locate and recover a set of human remains. Ultimately, this case is a testament to the power of effective collaboration within a medical legal death investigation. Our successful outcome yesterday was the direct result of many different forensic disciplines working together for a common cause. We had the solid investigative work in collecting, verifying, corroborating information from an informant. We had proper resource allocation, which included access to that heavy equipment used on scene, which aided the excavation process itself. We had lots of personnel support on scene, which was tremendously helpful. Bringing in, working with an external forensic team like ours from the Maple Center for Forensic Medicine, which also helps with the access to that specialized equipment and technology like the ground penetrating radar. And of course, support from the Sheriff's Office leadership, which all allowed us to work this case in the very best way possible. Every case that we work presents its own unique challenges, but this was one of the more challenging ones due to the need to relocate entire structures and remove concrete before we could even begin to effectively search and excavate any areas of interest. So overall, this is really an extremely intense and resource-heavy operation, but all of the factors came together to help us achieve our successful outcome, which was locating and recovering these remains. More often than not, cold case investigations and searches like this lead to dead ends. But yesterday was a different story. I attribute our ability to locate and recover these remains not only to effective collaboration, but more importantly, to the unwavering persistence of everyone involved. Because of that, we were able to recover these remains and thereby start the process of bringing justice to the victim and offering closure for her families and her loved ones. Cases like this, they're why we do what we do, and I'm extremely grateful to have been able to assist in this one.
Doctor, don't go anywhere.
Gentlemen, you guys want to come up here? We were able to recover 99.9% of Autumn's remains. They're with the state. They're with the ME now, pending positive identification, which we should get here very shortly, and we'll see, if they have a way of determining the cause of death, which is going to be kind of difficult. So, do you guys have any questions? Because these are the folks who have put all this time in. Detective McGuire was one of the first police reports that were done on this case. He actually was the second report that was done back in 2004. So this is something he started off with as a deputy, and now as a detective in our major case squad became the assigned investigator that basically led to the recovery of Autumn.
Were Jessica and Brian were they in a relationship?
Yes.
So they were boyfriend and girlfriend living together, and she was having sex with them?
Yes.
How's the family reacted, getting some closure now?
These guys talked to Autumn's twin brother, so when you guys just get up here and.
Obviously they're relieved, but he wasn't shocked. I mean, there's been rumors, but they're happy that she's been found.
I think one of the things that was this guy, I mean, really, he's a piece of shit, is really what he was. And apparently he had the ability to instill fear in everybody, and it took that Chris Miller to finally wake up and say, enough's enough. I can't live with my conscience as a father, knowing that I heard him tell people what he did. And that's what started the ball rolling on that thing. But the fact that, he would go back and visit the site, put Jessica Freeman, from what she tells us, in fear that he would kill her as easily as he killed Autumn, here's where we are now. The sad part is he'll never face, in this world, for the evil that he perpetrated. But sure enough, I'm hoping to God when he took his last breath on May 26th of 2022 that maybe he had a vision of where the hell he was headed.
Did Jessica ever tell you why he did it?
Good.
So what she told us was Autumn she wanted to go back home. And so he was afraid that she went home, told what happened, that he would face, legal troubles.
Have you guys ever had any clues of what happened with your grandmother? Because you mentioned that she was having some type of issues with her grandmother, and that's why she was supposedly at that place. Did you ever knew anything about that?
No, I never spoke with the grandmother, and I haven't even since then. I've been speaking with her twin brother.
I spoke to one of Autumn's cousins, worked for me when I was a Daytona Beach police chief, and she called me this morning. And she just said, like anything else, it's a grandparent raising a teenager. It was just oil and water. They weren't going to mix.
Sheriff, can you talk about the persistence, not only in this case, but maybe others you might be working on, about never giving up, no matter how long these things go on?
Yeah, and we talked about this. Seth was just talking about this the other day. Technology is emerging so quickly for us, whether it's DNA, no matter what it is, and there really never is a quote-unquote cold case. The men and women that are assigned to our major case unit and to all of our investigative units, that's what they understand. You may work a case for 20 years, and then you're going to retire. Well, you're going to hand that off to the next group of detectives that's going to take that and use technology to our advantage. And, to watch the doctor yesterday, I'm going to do this 36 years. I'd like to say I couldn't be surprised by anything or intrigued. I couldn't leave there. Just watching how she was teaching all of our new forensics examiners what to look for, how to dig. It was fascinating to watch that, and obviously to be able to come to the family and say, look, here, at least she can be buried with dignity now, not folded up and shoved in some crawl space.
Is it totally impossible to determine the cause of death?
Seth?
It's difficult when you have a skeleton without any soft tissues to go off of. They're going to do the best they can with the laboratory analysis and things of that nature, but given the time frame, it's really hard to say at this point.
For us, the two witnesses, Chris Miller and Jessica Freeman, they're the ones that really get us where we need to go. When they come up, and then when she tells us specifically where she's buried, that's enough to get the warrant. That's enough to start working with the doctor. They were working the whole time with the topography of the land. If we have to get under there, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do that? It wasn't just something that popped up. This has been going on for quite a while, since like 2022, I would say 2021, late 2021, to try to get there and do what we needed to do.
I know she came up and spoke and she's got immunity and it's helped the case, but do you suspect her being involved at all?
We don't suspect that at all, given the consistencies of her statement. Sure, they evolved over time, but with that emerging comfortability she had as time progressed, knowing that Brian was no longer alive, she obtained immunity from the state attorney's office. She started, getting her conscience was getting the best of her. So all these things kind of lining up. We have no reason to believe that anything she told us to this point is not true. In fact, more credibility goes to her statement because of what we found yesterday.
And how did he die?
He died during a medical procedure on May 26th of 2022, which almost 18 years to the day. It's definitely in a couple of days window that we believe that Autumn was killed.
Early on in your narrative, you were talking about, I think his grandmother received a phone call from 3 people.
Yeah, a couple when.
Was she ever there? Was that a red herring? Or?
I really don't know if she ever went there. I know that she called her from phone numbers in the Melbourne area code, and they had also sent letters from Palm Bay. Whether Autumn went there or not, or this was part of their hoax to hide where she was at, we don't know.
Thank you guys very much. Great job, gentlemen.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Doctor, any last words before they sign off?
No, I think we really covered it. I'm grateful for the opportunity to have been involved, and glad that we were able to get some justice and some closure in this one. It's always a difficult outcome when you find finality that there is in fact a deceased individual, but to be able to recover the remains and return them to the family is always a meaningful outcome nevertheless.
Thank you again very much. You make Volusia County proud, Doc.